Wouldn't it be interesting to find out how to build our own calculator? In this series of videos, I'll take you through the process, step by step, of designing and building a calculator in Python using the tkinter module, and then creating an executable using PyInstaller. I have created an executable file of it just to let you see what I'm talking about. So an executable file is where you no longer need to run Python or run Visual Studio or Thonny. You've created a file which actually has a Python interpreter in it. So here is my desktop icon, and if I double click that, it will run the calculator. And how it works, it's very similar to what you're used to. You've got your digits here, so let's say you want to 56 and you want to multiply that by 2. You're getting your 56 multiplied and it's updated to 2. If you want to see that answer, it's telling you what the sum is and it's updating the answer. You can also 14 minus 6 plus 3 minus 5 equals, and it will keep going, and it shows you your steps. So 14 minus 6 is 8, plus 3 is 11, minus 5 is 6. You can backspace, you can clear, and you can set your number to be minus. Multiplied by minus 3 gives you 36. So it works very similar. You can even put in decimal points and it should work that out. You can see that we're using the Unicode symbols here and again up here in the display to make it more user friendly. It can cope with floating point representation, and to make it more legible, it calculates whether or not it should be displayed in floating point. So these are all the things that we're going to learn to do. So the first thing that we want to get our head round is the user interface. So here's our window. You can see it's got the logo, a title. Here is a label. This is read only. And here is our input, our entry, tkinter entry. Now, we'll need to set it so that the user can actually type into this entry box and enter a number. They're being forced to use the buttons. So there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16. I think it's about 19 buttons on this interface, and it's laid out in a series of frames with the button widgets between them. Now let's have a look at the interface in a bit more detail. So I've just put this here and we can label up the important aspects of it. So we need our pencil for this, and I think I'll use black for it. So we've got our first thing to say is this is called a bitmap icon. A .ico file which you can create and then link. In actual fact, it's the same ICO file which I've used as the icon for the actual application. There is a window title, the usual window minus, maximize and close. This here is a label, so we'll just put it in label. This is an entry widget. These are buttons. In fact, all of these are buttons, and the last one are frames. I'll just put that there. So the widgets, tkinter is the module, and the widgets that we're using are as follows. We've got frames, buttons, entry, and label, and that's it. So it's 1, 2, 3, 5 widgets that we're going to work with. Now, the layout, the control of the layout, remember, position 0, 0 is up here, and we're working from the top corner down. And as you remember, if you've seen the last video on when we created the binary converter program, then I'll have explained about the padding. In order to space things out, you need to put, for instance, this here has got padding on the y-axis and padding on the x-axis. And this blue area here is a frame. And inside this frame, we've got two widgets. The label widget, which is kind of the same background colour, so you can't really see it, as the frame background colour. And it has no border, whereas the entry widget has got a border to give you a kind of 3D feel to it. And you can see how it's not... there's a space between the edge and the widget. That's the X padding, and there's actually a space between each of the widgets, and that's Y padding. So that's called pad X and pad Y. And you can see on the window there's actually pad X between the edge of the window and the frames, and even within the frames there is padding. So that's how it's all laid out. I think it's about time we started building this. I'm going to develop my calculator using Thonny because I like the fact that the shell is visible at the bottom. You can use Visual Studio Code if you wish, or you can use Python's IDLE. It's your choice, but I like Thonny. It's free. You just need to make sure that you've installed Python as well as Thonny. Right, so the first thing we want to do, put in a couple of comments to see what this program is. So it's a calculator program, and the GUI, the Graphical User Interface, is created with the tkinter module. Right, so let's start importing what we need for this. So we're going to say from tkinter import all, and we're using the asterisk to represent all, and we want to import the font so that we can create our own stylized fonts for the buttons. So import tkinter dot font, and we're going to call it font so that we can reference it and we know what it is we're referencing. The next thing we want to do is instantiate an instance of the tkinter class as our window object, and I'm going to call my tkinter object root. So root is assigned, and this is a capital T, tk, and because we've used these brackets, we are calling the constructor method of the class tk. Alright, so let's put in a comment to say that. Create, so constructor method of the class tk. So now we've got an object called root, which is a tk object. Now remember in the design explanation that I said that the title, root.title, inside the brackets we need speech marks, and inside the speech marks we put our title. So I'm going to call it arithmetic calculator. You can call yours whatever you want. We need to set up the size of the window, so we'll say root.geometry, and inside the brackets we'll put speech marks, and inside the speech marks we'll put the dimensions of the window, which are 430 by 500. So that's 430 times 500. Now remember the dimensions, 430 represents 430 character widths times 500 character heights. That's how tkinter operates. Then we'll configure a couple of properties of the window. The first one is the background color, so BG equals, and we'll do this, we'll use a hexadecimal color for this, so use the hashtag CC6699, and then we'll set up a pad X of 25 and a pad Y of 25. Before we can run this program, you need to make sure that you've added the last line of code, which will make the program continually loop until the user clicks the window close button. So add root.mainLoop brackets to the last line. I've got it here on line 20. All future code that I write will be in this space. This will always be my last line of code. Right, let's save this and run it. Press F5 or the green arrow, and what you should have is a window which is a kind of pinky colour, and it's got your title, arithmetic calculator, and at the moment it's got the default TK widget ICO file, and we're about to replace that. If you've got your own ICO file, you can use your own. I'm going to put mine in just now using root.icon bitmap, and inside here I'm going to put the path to my file inside speech marks, and I'm going to test it now just to check that works, and it has. It's picked it up nicely, so I'm happy with that. As long as you name your file .ico and it's a small file size, you can use whatever file you want, make your own. Make sure you're still inside this root.mainLoop. So underneath here, we're now going to start building up the frames. So the first frame, let's put in a comment to say display frame. And then underneath the display frame, we're going to have the clear frame, and then underneath the clear frame we're going to have the number button frame, and underneath the number button frame we're going to define the arithmetic operators frame. So those are all the frames. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 frames to help lay out this window a wee bit better. So our first frame is called FRM display. And we need to instantiate it, and we're instantiating an instance of the class label frame. So that's why you're using a capital L and a capital F. Inside the brackets, we need to pass in some parameters. The first one is the parent, which is root in this instance, and then set up a couple of properties. So the width is going to be 390. The height is going to be 85. And pad X and pad Y of 5. A foreground colour. Remember, it's hexadecimal, so it needs speech marks and is prefixed with a hashtag. So 8CFF66. And then a background colour, and the background colour is 006699. And lastly, we want to set the border to 0. Now that's us defined it. We've given it some properties to begin with, but we haven't actually added it to the window. We need to use the dot grid for that. So frm display dot grid, and inside these brackets we're given its position in terms of row and column. So the row is the first row, and the column, make sure you put a comma in between, and the column is the first column, which is 0 as well. And we're going to give it a column span of 2, and that will become apparent later on why we need to do that. Now there's one other thing that we need to set for this, and that is I don't want this frame will contain a label and an entry box. Sometimes if you're putting things into a widget, the widget will grow and shrink, and I don't want that to happen for this frame because it'll look a bit strange. So we're going to set its propagate to false. So frm display dot grid underscore propagate, and that's going to be set to false. It's capital F because it's a Boolean value. Right, let's save that and run it and see what happened. So false went well. You should have your frame, and you've got your pad X of 25 pixels and pad Y of 25 pixels from the root. Remember when you configured it, you gave it a pad X and a pad Y. That's what this is, to give you this space. Otherwise that frame would have been right up at that top corner there. Good, that looks good. Right, next we want to add the two widgets to this frame, and the widgets that we're going to add are the label, so we'll call it LBL display, and that's going to be an instance of the class label. So it gets capital L, and this time the parent of this label is not going to be the root, it's going to be the frm display, and the width is 45, and the pad Y is 0, and the border width is set to 0, and we'll give it a background colour. Just to see it at the moment, we'll give it a background colour of white, so that's FFFFFF. We'll give it a foreground colour of yellow, so that's hashtag FFFF00, and we'll set the anchor property to east, which means the text inside this box will be displayed on the right hand side. Now we want to actually add this to the forum, so we need to say lbl display.grid, and inside here we're going to say row 0 because it's the first row inside the forum, and column 0, and give it a pad X of 5 and a pad Y of 5. Save it and run it, and here we have our label. You can't do anything to it, a label is read only, you can't click into it or anything. Good. Right, I'm going to clear that. Right, what comes next? Next we want the entry box, so we'll prefix that with ENT, and this is going to be for number entry, so we'll call it ENT number, and it's entry, like capital E. So entry is the class, so in order to construct it we need to use the class constructor. So again, the parent of this is going to be frm display, and it's going to have a width of 45 and a border width of 2, and we're going to justify the text to the right with a capital RIGHT, and we also want to set the state of this entry widget to disabled, and I wonder if you can work out why I need to do that. I'll explain it to you in a wee second. Now we want to add it. .grid, and this time it's going into FRM display, but it's going under the label, so this time it's row 1. It's still going into the first column, so it's column 0, and it's going to have a pad X of 5 and a pad Y of 5. Let's save that and run it. So now we've got two widgets inside our frame widget, a label and a text box. Now, interestingly, this entry text box, you can't click in it, you can't use your keys to press in it, and that's why we set this state to disabled. Right, so let's go under here and in code change the state of this entry box. So we're going to say ent number dot config, and inside the brackets it's the property that we want to change in its state, and we want to set it to normal instead of disabled, so it's in capital letters. Control S to save that, F5 to run it, and this time we can click in it and I can put in whatever I want. Now, because we're using this in the context of a calculator, we don't want the user to be able to put in characters like this, and that's why we disable it. But when the program wants to enter a value in there, it has to use this ent number.config normal, then insert the characters, and then set the state back to disabled. So ent number dot insert 0, 0, so it's at the first position. We want 0 in there. Now remember, we've justified it to the right, and what we want, we're putting in a number 0 because that's kind of normal in a calculator to see that. Then we want to immediately disable it, so back to config and set the state to disabled. And then let's save that and run it. And we've got the value 0 in it, but the user can't type in it because it's been disabled again. So that's how the code is going to be able to update this but still maintain it. So what we're doing here is we're adding a bit of validation, input validation. When the user clicks on a number, we're going to update and enter, so the user can get the feedback to say, yep, that's the number I was expecting. But we're reducing errors from the user typing in some crazy combination of characters. Okay, let's have a look at what we're going to tackle next. So we're going to tackle this area, this frame here, which will contain the clear button, the backspace button, and the first arithmetic operator button. So if we come down in our code and put in where's our comment for clear frame. Let's backspace to get rid of those spaces now, we don't need them. Right, so the first thing we want to do is create the frame. So FRM, we'll call it clear, and we need to instantiate it with the label frame class. Now this parent is going to be root, and we'll give it a width of 390. And don't forget your commas between each of your parameters here, and a height of 100. Character heights, a pad X of 10 and a pad Y of 10. A foreground, I'm going to come down a line here, a foreground colour of hexadecimal 8CFF66. a background colour of hashtag 669999 and a border of 0. Right, now next thing we want to do is actually add it to the window. So frm clear dot grid. Now it can't be row 0, so it's row 1, but it's column 0. And put in your column span of 2. Let's save it and run it, check that that's worked, and there we have. So we've got our frame, which will contain our clear button, backspace button and divide button. We also don't want this frame to change size, so we want to put in frm clear dot grid underscore propagate, and we want to set that to false. Okay, so that's that done. Now we'll move on to the buttons. So we'll prefix the buttons with btn, and the first button will be called clear. So btn clear, and we need to create it. So we're creating an instance of the class button, so it's a capital B, and we've called the constructor, and we're going to pass in the parent, which is frm clear. We want the text in this button to say clear, and we want a pad X of 48. That means the text will be centered in the middle of the button, and a pad Y of 5. Don't forget your commas between each. So we want a background colour of, we'll just put in white. So its hashtag for white is 6Fs, and a foreground, which will be the colour of the text, and we'll make that black. And the opposite of the white is 000000. Oh, in a wee while we'll add a command here so that when the user clicks on the button something will happen, but we'll not put that in yet. Now that we've defined btn clear, we need to add it to our frame. So btn clear dot grid, and the parameters that we want here are the row column. So we want it to go into row 0, we want it to go into column 0, but we want it to have a column span of 2 so that it looks like a double button. When you create your widgets in tkinter, each widget comes with default styles. I would like to create a style for our calculator, so I want the buttons all to have the same font. So in order to do that, you need to define your style. So I'm going to go up to just under where we defined the root of our user interface, and I'm going to put a comment in here to say define font styles, and then I'm going to call a font style btn font. And because we imported it, if you see on line 5 here, we've imported the module font from tkinter and we've called it font, so in our code we can now refer to this font. So I'm going to say font dot font with a capital F as the constructor, and inside here I'm going to say what size I want my font to be and what font family. So I'm going to set the size of my buttons to 20, and I'm going to set the family of my buttons to Appleboy BTN. Make sure you put capitals in there. Right, so that's me defined a style, and I've called it BTN font. I can now apply that style to any widget that I create in my user interface here. So if we go back down to the clear button, I'm going to now apply that style to the clear button. So what we say is btn clear, square brackets, single speech mark font, then close that and then put your assignment in, and it's btn font. Let's have a look at that and see if it's worked. So save it and then run it. And we can see that we've got a nice font on our button and it's in the correct place inside the FRM clear frame. Good. Alright, next thing we want to do is add the backspace button. So let's create it, btn backspace, and we're going to use our constructor for this, so it's button class, and we're going to pass in as parameters the parent, which is FRM clear. We're going to give it some text. And now the text that we're going to apply to this is actually a Unicode character for the backspace symbol. So we need to tell Python that that's what's happening. So we say \u to tell Python that what's coming next is the code for a Unicode symbol. And the code that we're interested in is 232B, 232B. Now the fact that that B's there, it tells you, oh, this has been represented in hexadecimal. Unicode characters can store more than ASCII. Remember ASCII, the maximum is 8 bits, which gives you 255 characters. So it's enough for alphanumeric and some commands on your keyboard. But Unicode covers all languages, all special symbols in languages, all wingdings, emojis, everything can be written in Unicode. So this is the kind of universal code that all operating systems, all platforms use to represent symbols and characters. We'll be using it here for not only the backspace character, but the divide, multiply symbol and the change the sign on button. So we also want to give it a pad X of 10 and a pad Y of 5, a background colour of white and a foreground colour of black. So I'm going to copy these from above and paste them in. And the next thing we want to do is actually add it to the frame. So btn backspace dot grid, because the clear button occupies 2 columns, this backspace button will be put into the 3rd column. So it's the same row, so row 0, but it's column 2. And we want to give it a pad X of 3 just to push it away from the previous clear button. Now the last thing to do is apply the font. So I'm going to copy the code from above and paste it in. And all I need to do is change it to btn backspace. Then I'm going to save it and run it. And if all's went well, we should have 2 buttons, and this is the Unicode character for backspace, and we have called it here 232B. That's it there. Good. Next we want to put the divide button in, so let's give ourselves some room. So we're still inside the clear frame section and we're underneath the backspace, so this will be btn underscore divide, and we're going to construct it. So it's button, so it'll be FRM clear. The text will be the Unicode character for the divide symbol, and that is \u to let Python know what comes next is a Unicode code, and it's 2797, so 2797. Next comes pad X, and that will be 10, and pad Y, and that will be 5. So that's the padding inside the button. So we're going to give it a background colour, so it's not white this time, it's a kind of yellow colour, and it's hexadecimal, so it's FFFFE6, and a foreground colour of, I'm just going to put an orange here. Right, next what we want to do is add it to the grid. So btn divide dot grid. Still going into row 0, but it's going into column 3, and we're going to give it a pad X of 15 just so that it lines up with the arithmetic characters in the next frame that we'll make. So we want to now apply that style, so copy the font style from above, and all you need to do is assign it to the divide button. Then we'll save it and run it, and we should have our 3 buttons. Perfect. Next we're going to tackle the button grid, so let's have a look at it. Right, so this is the button grid here. You can see that it's got a blue background, the same as the frame display, and inside it we've got a grid of these buttons. So it starts 7, 8, 9, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, positive, negative, 0 and decimal point. So let's put this in. This is why we had to make the frame display and the frame clear span 2 columns, because this is a column and then this is a column. Right, so we'll move down to our number button frame, and we will instantiate a frame widget. So we'll call it FRM numbers. FRM numbers is assigned the label frame. Its parent is root. It will have a width of 290, a height of 345, a pad X of 10, and a pad Y of 10. I'm going to move down here. It'll have a foreground colour of, now this is going to be a hexadecimal colour, so it's hashtag 8CFF66, 8CFF66, and a background colour of hashtag 006699, so that's hashtag 006699, and a border of 0. Okay, now we need to add it to the display, so FRM numbers dot grid, and we're going to put it into row 2 column 0. So remember, the row started at 0, so display is 0, clear is 1, and now the numbers will be row 2, but it is the first column, which is 0. Now again, we don't want this frame to change size depending on what the user does, so we're going to set its grid propagate to false. So FRM numbers dot grid underscore propagate, and we'll set that to be false. That will just keep us right. Now we should have a look at this and see what the interface looks like and check that the codes went in okay. Now that's fine. It doesn't look as if it's pushed over to the left hand side, and that's because we haven't created this second frame to sit here, but that's fine just now. Right, so I'm going to close that. So next we will define our buttons. So define buttons, and we'll start with the button 7, so it's BTN 7, and that will be a button, and it's going into FRM numbers. The text on the button will be 7. It will have a pad X of 25 and a pad Y of 5. A pad Y of 5. It will have a background colour of orange and a foreground colour of yellow. And that will do it for just now. Now we need to add that button, so it's btn7.grid. Now this one is going into row 0, column 0. So row is 0, the column is 0. And we want to apply that font style that we've created. So let's copy it from above, paste it in, and we need to assign it to the correct widget. So in this case it's btn7. And I'm going to save that and just run it to check to see what's happening before I move on. Right, so I'm happy I've got my button there, so I want 8 and 9 here. So I'm going to copy this code because it's going to be more or less the same. So copy, give myself some space, paste that in there. So I'm going to change this to button 8, button 8 and button 8. The grid will be row 0, but this time it will be column 1. The text inside it will be 8. Right, let's save it, check to make sure that's worked okay. There we are, so I've got 7, 8, and next I'm going to put 9 in. So I'm going to paste this in underneath. And again, I'm going to change it to 9 this time. Change the text to 9, padding colour will stay the same, row 0, but this time it will be column 2. And the font, let's check that, Control S to save it, F5. Right, now that I've got these 3 buttons in the correct position, I'm going to copy that code and put 3 buttons underneath. So I'm going to copy my 7, 8 and 9, paste it underneath, and it will be 4, 5 and 6. So 7 will be 4, 8 will become 5, and 9 will become 6. Obviously we have to change the row this time rather than the columns. So this time it's going to be, it'll be in row 1. Right, let's save that and run it. And everything's working out well. We've got 7, 8, 9, 4, 5, 6. Next we're going to do 1, 2, 3. So let's come down a couple. Control V to paste that in. So this 7 becomes 1 this time. And the row will be row 2. 8 becomes 2. The text becomes 2 and the row becomes 2. And 9 becomes 3. The text in the button becomes 3. And the row becomes 2. Let's save that and run it and check that that's added okay. Good, so we've got our... Now we can see that the button 1 is a bit smaller, and the reason for that is we've used the same padding, but this actual character width is thinner than 4. So let's fix that. So number 1 should have a pad X of 28. So let's go into number 1 and change the pad X to 28. Let's save it and run it again and see if that's fixed that. Yep, so number 1 looks a bit better. Number 2 should have a, it's just slightly too wee, number 2, so let's add another 1 onto that pad X. So number 2 should have a pad X of 26. Let's save that, run it and see if that improves it. Yeah, I'm happy with that, that looks good. Right, next we want to put in our next row of buttons, but I can see something not quite right here. This height of this calculator is not tall enough. So let's go up and check out the height in that root config. Yeah, this should be 580. Let's make that 580. So I'm on line 9 root.geometry 430 by 580. Let's save that and see if that's improved the... Yeah, that's better. Now we've got everything displaying good. So let's go back down to the buttons, because we've got our next row of buttons to put in, and this will be our, let's say, Control V. So number 7 in this case becomes the change of sign. So we'll call this btn pause neg. So btn pause underscore neg. I'm just going to copy that, paste it in there for 7. And it's not row 0 this time, it's row 3. Now we don't want the text 7 here, we want the Unicode character, so it's \U, and the Unicode character, it's actually 3 characters here, so it's 207A is the first code, 207A, and then another \U, and the next one is 2044, another \U for the third character, and it's 208B, 208B. Right, so we've got our 3 codes in there. Now the pad X for this, because that's quite wide, we need to reduce this, so that's going to be 14. The Y will stay the same. Right, let's see, row 3, that's correct. Now we've got the middle button will be the 0, so that's button 0, and the text will be 0, and the padding will be 25 for that. Yep, that's fine. And the next one will be a decimal point, so we'll call this one btn underscore dec point. I'm just going to copy that, save me having to write that in. So change that 9. The text inside here will be another Unicode character, so \U, and the code for the decimal point is 23F9, 23F9. Now we want the padding for this to be 19. And the other padding is correct, and we've applied the font. Okay, let's save this and run it. Oh, what have I done wrong? Oh, look what I've not done. I've not changed the row. So they're actually, there we are, look, the 0 and the decimal point are up here at row 0, because I haven't moved them down to row 3. So let's do that just now. I'll close that. Row 3. And row 3. Let's save that. F5. And all the buttons now are occupying the correct row and column position within that grid. Next thing that we want to do is add in here the frame for the arithmetic operators. So down here we should have a section for this. Let's move it up. And let's get our operators in. So we'll call this FRM operators. So FRM underscore operators, and we'll instantiate our frame label, label frame. And we're passing into the root. And the width will be 100 and the height will be 345. So width is 100 and the height will be 345. Give it a pad X of 10 and a pad Y of 10. A foreground colour of 8CFF66, so hashtag 8CFF66, and a background colour of 669999, so hashtag 669999, and a border of 0. Now we want to add this frame to the window, so .grid, and the position is row 2, column 1. So it's row 2, whoops, and column 1. And we'll just set the grid propagate to false for this as well. So frm operators dot grid underscore propagate, and we'll set that to false, and that will stop it moving about. Right, let's save that and run it and see what happens. Oh, FG, what have I done? Oh, I forgot my comma here after my pad Y. Right, make sure you've got commas separating them. Right, let's clear that and Control S, F5. Good, so that looks better, doesn't it? So you can see that this has pushed this back over and it's all lining up nicely. And we've now got our frame for the operators ready to take these kind of buttons. What's that? Okay, so let's put in the buttons. Was I a bit quick there? Let me see what they look like. So it's multiply, subtract, plus, and equals. So that will be row 0, row 1, row 2, and row 3, and they're all occupying column 0 because this frame has got its own grid. Right, so btn, multiply, and oops, and we need to construct it, so we're using the button class for this, and we're calling the constructor, so we need to give it the parent. So in this case it will be frm operators, comma, and then we'll give it some text, and the text is going to be the Unicode multiply symbol, so it's \u, and the code is 2716. What comes next? We need to give it some padding, so we'll say pad X, set that to 13, and pad Y, we'll set that to 5. We'll give it a background colour and a foreground colour, so BG is assigned, and we'll say speech marks, hashtag FFFFE6, FFFFE6, and a foreground colour of green. Okay, now let's add it. So btn multiply dot grid, it's going into row 0 and column 0. Right, now we need to add the font style, so let's just copy that from above, pop it in here, change to btn multiply, and then save it, run it just to check that it's working okay, and there we have our first button within the operator's frame. Good. Right, now that we've got one in, I'm going to copy that. And the next button will be subtract. And it's going into row 1, and the Unicode character for subtract is 2796. 2796. Let's save that. Now, do we need to change any padding? I think we'll change the padding to 10 for this because that subtract symbol's a bit big. Okay, Control S, F5. Yeah, that's good. Right, so we've got add next and then equals. So I'll copy this, paste it down, give myself some space. So we're into, this time it's add, btn add. And the Unicode character for add is 2795. And with the padding, we'll keep it as 10 and 5. We'll change the colour to blue. And we'll change the colour for subtract to purple. Just to give them different colours. Right, let's see what this is. Now the subtract has went over the previous, sorry, the addition has went over the subtract button because I didn't change the row here. This needs to be row 2. Right, save that, run it. Good, multiply, subtract, plus, so we've just got the equals button to put in. Let's copy that, paste it down here, and this will be, we'll just call it btn equals, yeah. Equals and equals, and we'll give it row position 3 this time so that it doesn't sit on top of the add button. Now the symbol for the equals sign is 003D. 003D. And we need to change the padding. Yep, let's change that to 13 on the X. We'll keep the Y padding the same. We'll change the foreground colour to black. So we'll put in here hashtag 000000. Save that and refresh. That's perfect. So we've got our interface created now, but it doesn't actually do anything. The buttons click, but we haven't added any events or commands for these buttons, and that's what's going to come next, is coding what goes on behind the scenes. So that will be in the next video, part 2. Good.